Hey, welcome everyone. If we could find our seats, we'll go ahead and get started. Plenty of seats up front as usual. And as the last people are coming in, please do find your seat and we'll get started. Welcome, welcome. So we're really excited to kick off our lecture series in a very special way. In a moment, I'm going to introduce our guest, Elena Tudela. In fact, I'm going to ask Professor Juan Burke to do the honors. But before I do that, I wanted to talk about the special nature of this lecture. This lecture is the Craig and Mimi Spangler Endowed Lecture. We have one of these every year. And they're quite special because we use it as an opportunity to invite an emerging practitioner, typically an international practitioner, to come and speak about their work. We often ask professionals who are working both in the field of architecture, but also interested in community and urban planning. And in part, that's because this lecture series is also co-organized by our planning department. So I want to especially thank Clara Irazabel for her help in organizing this and helping to sponsor it. But we are especially grateful to Craig and Mimi and their family for offering the resources to help enrich our community. Thank you. Great. And then before we get started, one quick programming note that at 5:30, we're all going to head out and have ice cream. That's fun, right? So that's going to be the perfect end to this experience. But for now, I think I'd like to ask Professor Juan Burke to come and introduce our special guest, Elena Tudela.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Luis Burke, an assistant professor here of architectural and urban history, and it is my pleasure to introduce our guest tonight. Elena is coming directly from Mexico City, which is, in my opinion, one of the most fascinating and beautiful, amazing cities in the world. And I am biased because I am Mexican, but I firmly believe that. Mexico City in many ways represent many of the cities of the global South, facing uncertainty in an age of climatic crisis. It's a city that continues to grow, sprawling metropolis of more than 20 million people. So it is in this very exciting and complex context that our guest has created a practice that I feel could tell us a lot about the future of urban planning and urban solutions. So let me tell you a little bit more about Elena. Elena Tudela is co-founder of the Office of Urban Resilience, ORU, which is a women and minority-led urban and landscape design practice focusing on building resilience to climate change. ORU maintains offices in Mexico City and New York City, and the firm believes in the transformative power of urban design and landscape infrastructure to shape new futures of interconnected urban regions, strengthening ecological structures, environmentally integrated cities, and resilient communities. The firm designs processes for integrating urban and environmental dynamics at different scales and within multiple social, economic, and political contexts. Their projects seek to generate socio-environmental impact through applied research and collective processes. In 2023, ORU was recognized as an emerging voice by the Architectural League of New York. Elena is an associate professor at the Facultad de Arquitectura of the UNAM, the National University of Mexico, in Mexico City, and she holds an architecture degree from that institution, as well as a master's degree in architecture in urban design from the Graduate School of Design at Harvard University. So join me in welcoming our guest, Elena Tudela.
Thank you. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me well? Perfect. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for your kind invitation and your presentation. As a Spangler lecturer, it's an honor for me to be here. I'll be presenting work I've developed from my design practice at Office for Urban Resilience ORU, where I'm co-founder along with Adriana Chavez, Victor Rico, and Memo Chavez. Oru, as Juan was mentioning, is a design practice that tries to have a critical lens towards resilience, that advocates for scaled-up design thinking to foster new futures of interconnected urban regions, strengthened ecological structures, and empowered communities. We seek to promote actionable ideas, mediate interests, foster collective narratives, collaborate across disciplines, and use innovative tools to help shape a better future for life in urban and urban peripheral contexts. I'll be presenting our work as an office, but also some ideas I've been researching and developing from an academic perspective as a professor of the School of Architecture at UNAM in Mexico City. These are the general contents of my presentation. I'll be talking about risks and crisis context, resilience as a conceptual framework, and then explain a little bit more how we design our own team at Oru. And finally, some projects that speak of one of the main axis of our work, which is collectivity and design in different types of scenarios. So firstly, I will go briefly over data and contextual information that is very relevant to have in mind and represents the foundations of our practice. So scientific information is exactly that, a foundation, not only for us, but I would say for humankind. And it is particularly relevant today due to climate change, as well as other environmental global challenges. So these are some of the figures that maybe we don't have at hand, but we don't work with, but it's relevant to understand them. As designers, I think we should be familiarized with this updated science data while we find specific ways to contribute to positive change. It is very difficult to grasp this information because it relates to planetary or regional scales of space and time. And until now, we haven't been in contact with them directly. Now we are starting to experience it through our bodies, through our everyday, through our, citizen experience, and in a very intense way. And whether it's through fires, heat waves, rain, or more disastrous adverse events. This is the magnitude of current climate change, as you can see, at least in 1,000-year figures. And according to the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, data from 2018, there are 730 petagrams of carbon dioxide that must be eliminated from the atmosphere by the end of the century to keep the goal of 1.5 degrees increase in temperature, which is equivalent to the total CO2 emitted by US, China, Germany, and UK since the Industrial Revolution. That also helps us understand the magnitude of what we're dealing with. It is difficult, but not impossible. And this comes from the words of Johan Rockström. I don't know if you're acquainted with him. It's a scientist, director of the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, and participates in the Stockholm Resilience Center. At the COP26, he mentioned that in the list of tasks to fulfill the Paris Agreement, giving up fossil fuels is the easiest one. The more difficult one has to do with restructuring the economy, changing consumption habits, defending ecosystems, fairly distributing the remaining space in the planetary boundaries, etc., which are tasks that are within the realm of design and design practices, urbanism, landscape architecture itself. So science, as I mentioned, the basis of our culture, our fundamental heritage, is the object of marginalization and socio-political antagonism today. And that is a huge problem. The scientific basis of climate change, its impacts and possible solutions have not been effectively communicated and explained to the general public, which is also something we can contribute to as within our realm. I would like to share with you these two sources of information. The one to the left, the Climate Change 2023 synthesis report from the IPCC, which only gathers information and data being produced, but does not conduct its own research, with around 3,000 specialists writing and reviewing it, producing analytical documents, but not prescriptive ones. This is the synthesis report of the sixth revision. The first report goes back to 1990, and it was published last year. The one to your right is a journal's article from the scientists that first used the term climate crisis, published last year as well, with some very disturbing news. And the work of the scientists of the article, among them William J. Ripple and Christopher Wolfe, show new data being produced and analyzed by them, and it's the sort of research that fits into the IPCC reports. It starts with, and you can read it, it's it's small, but you can see it. Life on planet is at siege. We are venturing into uncharted climate territory. So not too optimistic. They report a set of vital signs of the planet and the potential drivers of climate change, revealing deeply concerning trends and patterns related to climate change for that year only, for 2023. These are some of the graphics within the article. And as you can see from the red line, which represents 2023, you can see, for instance, the cumulative area burned in Canada below here, which is crazy. The world surface temperature, so the darker the line, the closer to 2023. And you can see that we are the Antarctic sea ice extent, the global sea ice extent, and of course, you can see the anomaly. It reflects that things are turning bad faster than expected. And to the right, you see a photograph from Acapulco in Mexico, a coastal city, after it was hit by Category 5 Otis hurricane last year. You can see the devastation it brought along, stores being looted, no water, no food, material assets being damaged, no gasoline, no public transportation, banks, total collapse. In the worst tragedy for the region and probably the worst of its type in the country. Just imagine what would happen if we had a couple of those a year. We'd be in trouble. So we see these types of news every day. It's up to the point where we become sort of anesthetized, and it's difficult to remain scandalized accordingly. This is the coolest year of the following ones. So we know the world is not on the right track. There's all of these interconnected climatic planetary challenges, some of which you can see here. And then you add war, pandemic, oil extraction, fossil fuels being used, etc. So this is the state of the 9 boundaries that the Stockholm Resilience Center studies and evaluates every year, or every 2 years, that gives stability to the geological era that allows us to inhabit the planet. The Holocene, also known more recently as Anthropocene or Capitalocene. And I'm not sure that the 17 Sustainability Development Goals, the SDGs, that you can see from the UN below, are enough, or if they are the right framework to implement actionable processes to address these issues. And sometimes I even believe that they can be misleading or promote greenwashing if they're not evaluated and analyzed in real time. One of the challenges in addressing global problems is inequality and how it produces climate change and how it is affected by it. Latin America and the Caribbean is one of the world regions where climate change effects and impacts such as heat waves, decreases in crop yield, wildfires, coral reef depletion, and extreme sea level events are projected to be more intense. Recognizing the urgent need to address the impact of climate change on impoverished and unequal regions, we have broadened our research at ORU to encompass Latin America. This region, much like Mexico, is poised to bear the brunt of the extreme consequences of climate change, making it an important area for our research to focus on, and maybe some of you as well. This regional exploration allows us to work with ecological design at large in a meaningful way, one that transcends greenwashing and commonplace perspectives and incorporates resilience as a fundamental capacity to adapt to present and future challenges as well. As we embrace this way of thinking, Mexico and Latin America have become a valuable laboratory for experimentation and learning, not only in terms of risk and resilience, but also regarding our shared colonial past. We're currently interested in understanding emerging decolonization discourse and processes, not only from a historical perspective, but projecting into Latin America's present and future. What are we colonizing today? Mexico's geological, geographical, and topographical condition positions Mexico as one of the 17 world's mega diverse countries that hold almost 70% between these 17 countries of the biodiversity of the world. We have lost almost 1 million species up to now. We have a huge responsibility as Latin Americans and as a world to help us do that. And we're not doing a great job at it currently. Mexico is one of 8 Vavilov centers, which are centers of origin of cultivated plants where domestication started, also considered centers of diversity. which also translates into a multicultural and multilingual rich territory. Working in Mexico has allowed us to bridge design with global challenges such as climate change, biodiversity loss, water management, and land use changes. We as Soru started in Mexico City because that's where we're from. From the onset of our practice, we realized that working in the city allowed us to test ideas on resilience and sustainability in complex and very dynamic conditions. As our practice's main context, we realized Mexico holds significant potential as a case study for current urban problems and as a platform for urban environmentally integrated practices. The city is fertile ground for experimentation, among other things because of the risks it faces, ranging from water scarcity, earthquakes, social inequality, political tensions due to its centrality, geological faults and subsidence, among other stressors, but also due to its natural, social, and cultural resource availability. The city teaches us how to thrive when faced with these complex challenges. Here is a series of axonometric drawings we did that showcase the evolution of the city from pre-Hispanic times to what we see today. And as you can see, it is one of the most radical transformations of a city in the world, from a city on a lake to a completely transformed social ecosystem, where you don't see those lakes anymore until it's rainy season and they reappear, but with sewage. So we start envisioning what could the future be like if we understand that evolution. So adopting the lens of resilience has profoundly influenced our approach to projects, prompting us to reflect on our role as designers of urban environment and the impact our work can have in shaping the future. Designing with resilience breaks down our sense of order and habitual structures of seeing and understanding the world. Resilience is about adapting and reducing vulnerability. It's the capacity of any system to deal with external changes whilst maintaining its structure, functions, and identity. Definition coined by the Canadian ecologist C.S. Holling in the 1980s, who also designed this diagram on the bottom right, the figure 8 one. And these are some of the concepts that derive from ecological resilience that we believe are very relevant to work with in design practices. For instance, the fact that it is impossible to eliminate risk. There will always be residual risk, and that's something that we need to understand. So every project you do, you can start by questioning yourselves, what are the risks this place, this project faces? To aim to fail in the best possible way. So switching from a fail-safe perspective towards a safe to fail. So it will definitely fail, but let's make it safer. Seek not just adaptation, but learning and emerge stronger, which is part of the definition from ecology about resilience. Seek risk minimization through no regrets measures. So what can we do that might not work, but will work in different ways? So have multiple benefits operating at the same time. To be proactive, not only reactive. Accept uncertainty, which is something us designers have a huge problem with. We love controlling everything, and we need to let go of that. And work collectively. Systems must change to recover equilibrium or functions. And then there's the redundancy principle, which we haven't worked much with because we're closer to engineering, where we do things exactly for what is needed as formulas. The redundancy principle is not organized around efficiency, but works with cross-scaling as vehicles for translating system thinking into cities and societies. Resilience, risk and resilience have become the backbone of our practice and the focus of most of my research. And as the name of our office suggests, we are using resilience as a guiding principle for design, and it has been a consistent thread. Unfortunately, its recent widespread and generalized use has caused its definition to dilute, and the term to lose meaning when it most needs clarification and depth. Since resilience is a capacity, neither good or bad in itself, it requires clarity of objectives and whom we build resilience for. We seek resilience particularly for vulnerable human and non-human collectivities, which involves coordination and mediation between distinct needs, aspirations, and visions, but also sometimes different visions colliding. The distinction between bouncing back and retaining the ability to get back is crucial. Systems must change to recover equilibrium functions, and as designers and planners, we don't like it. Furthermore, simply trying to make systems more robust to changes may lead to unsustainable systems to resist over time. We need to transcend the buzzword and the greenwashing. And so the way we are operating within this concept is through systemic and integrated approaches. Complex systems are characterized by the confluence of multiple processes whose interrelationships constitute the structure of a system that functions as an organized whole. A system, therefore, is a conceptual construction, a design, made by the researcher, the observer, the designer, the student, with which we can represent what we consider to be the most significant activities and factors that are identified or inferred from reality for a given purpose. So where do we cut the piece of reality that we'll be working with is part of the design, if not the first step for it. We understand that conventional architectural tools are insufficient when dealing with planetary, social, environmental, and urban phenomena. Therefore, we embrace this systemic thinking and open-ended approaches to address such challenges. We design and construct systems and identify sensible relations to the site, considering its broader social context and timescales. We also consider a process where projects will evolve and sustain over time, sometimes with us and sometimes with other stakeholders. For example, we have some ideas here of the way that we can incorporate it to design, sort of like in a metaphor, how allopathic or conventional medicine, Western medicine, interacts or could interact with traditional medicine, depending on the case. Or understanding when to use a linear approach when it's something that's not complex, and when to use a non-linear approach when there's complexity into the system, where the start and the finish lines are not a specific point, but different places where you can decide what that is for each given project. There's also the idea of string figures or relationships among terrestrial entities, not always human and not always physical. To apply resilience to our practice, it is important to overcome binomials such as urban versus rural, nature versus culture, or what Remkol has in his article for the book Ecological Urbanism, calls progress versus apocalypses. And to transcend also the nature-culture divide, shifting towards an understanding of interdependencies. And that is something that we can learn by observing reality or observing the territory. This is a quote from the Global Water Ambassador Henk Oving in its book, Too Big, Rebuilt by Design, a transformative approach to climate change from 2018, that says, by design, resilience can be a powerful framework to catalyze the delivery of systemic future visions from a global perspective, as well as inclusive cities, comprehensive planning, and sustainable climate action. And now, moving forward towards what our team is, last year, when we were awarded the Emerging Voices prize from the New York Architectural League, Fernanda Canales, as part of the jury, a Mexican architect, described us as a team of teams because of the way we frame the projects we work on. So we start by designing the team and the process required for a given objective or goal. And we had not perceived that as something relevant in our practice until then when she mentioned it. When we started analyzing the way resilience has permeated into the way we manage our office, but also has been helping us, we noticed that it has been helping us to be financially sustainable. For us, these have become design problems themselves, not to be just outsourced to other specialists, but to work with them from a creative perspective, something we were not taught how to do during our studies. Oru is more than just a mere organization. We try to think of it as an ecosystem, teaming with diverse people and collaborators, many of them. Right now, we're collaborating with more than 150 different people, all coming together to achieve a common goal. With every project we undertake, we have the power to compress or extend our network, forging solid and interdisciplinary teams to design these integral processes from inception to maintenance that intend to push the limits of what is accepted as possible. Adriana, one of the founders, lives in New York. Victor and Memo live in Mexico City. I live in Mexico City, but travel a lot to Madrid. And also some of our team members don't live in Mexico City, so they can decide where to live. We have a super talented team and an amazing web of collaborators with whom we've created this unique environment. We are sometimes asked, like, how did we create Oru? Was it hard? And the answer, of course, is yes. That's almost everything. But also, Oru didn't happen overnight. It took many years and experience acquisition in multiple sectors. In 2012, we crossed paths at the Harvard Graduate School of Design. And the following year, still as students, we collaborated with our friends Einat Rosenkrantz and Oscar Malaspina from Latin America to submit an application to the Rockefeller Foundation Centennial Initiative 100 Resilient Cities on behalf of Mexico City's Ministry of Environment. To those unfamiliar with the initiative, it was a global platform that facilitated knowledge transfer between cities and promoted resilience as a transversal element in their planning and design. This was actually the first time we grappled in depth with the term resilience. Fortunately, Mexico City was selected in the first round, which marked the beginning of our office's journey in a relationship with our local government. When we came back to Mexico, we pursued different career paths. I focused on interdisciplinary urban environmental design research projects, becoming an associate professor. Adriana joined the Resilience Office in Mexico City and the IDB's Mid-Cities program, while Victor was hired as a director of special projects of Mexico City's Public Space Authority, where I have worked previous to my graduate studies when it opened for the first time. And these are some of the projects we developed before joining Oru. At last, but not least, Memo, the fourth founder of Oru, was instrumental in driving the office's growth for an entrepreneurial and startup mindset, which proved crucial in the eventual founding of Oru in 2018. We believe transformative projects are processes, not necessarily condensed into objects. The design tools we are trained in as architects and urbanists and landscape architects can be applied to different subjects and even to ideas themselves. When talking about project implementation, we don't always participate in all stages, and these are not always linear or can be halted to be repurposed and restarted years later. Designing with resilience breaks down the way we observe things. It requires accepting uncertainty, yielding control, also integrating design with non-design, and being open to multiple desirable scenarios and not just one solution. It demands a keen sense of observation, recognizing that architecture is co-produced, and that in this way, we can better decide where and when to design and when to withdraw. Practicing observation becomes very relevant for design. Observation encourages positive attributes such as creativity, serendipity, and invention. Practicing observation implies recognition that everyone designs and shapes their environment, whatever their background is, and regardless of whether they're designers or not, or whether they're human. The world was largely been narrated or has been largely narrated by a Western white male vision. It is imperative to recognize and value the plurality of ways of life, beliefs, aspirations, and types of habitats among which we must collectively coexist. This is a research project I'm currently working on with the support of the National Fund for Culture and Arts of Mexico, titled Uncertain Futures, Risk Atlas for Urban Architecture in Mexico, where I share my observation findings and analyze the possible roles of uncertainty in our discipline today. The maps I am working on reveal resilient roads for design practices that engage more consciously and ethically with the social and environmental needs of the territories. And that's the website you can go into, and hopefully soon I'll have the English version of it. As Hashim Sarkis, a dear friend and professor of ours, puts it in his publication, The World as an Architectural Project, architecture has a cognitive role. It gives us tools to understand the spatial, technological, and social processes that are shaping the planet in order to define the types and scales of architectural intervention that can cope with the ways in which globalization is happening. Reflecting upon this quote, we are convinced in Oru that design must go beyond the problem-solving or object-making approach. Through research, we inform multiple sensitivities that allow us to understand the intricate ecological, social, technical, and political configurations that must seamlessly align to bring complex projects to fruition. So visualization, diagrams, and maps are vital in our work. Mapping specifically unleashes potential, reinventing the territory and again, each map with new and diverse consequences. The function of mapping is not to mirror reality, but to reshape the worlds that people inhabit. It becomes a project that reveals and explores hidden potential. So the way we see it, mapping is the first project to identify territorial occupation, and it becomes an incredible cultural project that creates and constructs as much as it measures and describes. It also requires a spatially and temporally multiscalar approach, which has brought us closer to the mapping tools and visualization resources, not only for analysis purposes, but also for narrative building. Defining the right scales of analysis for each project is also part of the design processes and contributes to building more integral systems where action and transformation can take place and evolve over time. The idea that designers work individually is quite outdated. The problems of the 21st century require collective thinking and action, and collaborative work allows us to portray more informed and sensitive spatial imaginations that can crystallize into more comprehensive and sustainable forms of co-inhabiting our planet. All of our projects are collective in different ways. The idea of design as a tool for collective intelligence is one we keep reflecting upon. So I'll be talking about some projects first in the realm of the peripheral community design processes. And the first one is Rio San Felipe Water Intelligence Hub, which is located in Oaxaca, Mexico. And this year, the story of this project is that we were invited to participate in a program called Practice Lab. I don't know if you know it, developed and coordinated by REARC Institute. The Practice Lab is a space of learning by doing where this institute explores alternative, unconventional grant making to prototype diverse models for philanthropy in architecture. So they select working directly with architects and professional practitioners to support the realization of site-specific, self-initiated, and community-led projects rooted in their social and ecological context. So we once received an email saying, we have this money, we want you to make a project, are you up for it? And of course, at first we thought this is a scam. This should go to spam and our spam's not working properly. But then after having some conversations with them, we realized they are pretty serious about their practice lab. And we are now undergoing this process of design in this place that nobody would probably design for them, but that have a very specific need. Our project is in Oaxaca, as I mentioned, which holds great importance in the world of conservation due to its abundant biodiversity and numerous endemic and native species. But beyond its environmental value, Oaxaca is one of Mexico's cultural powerhouses and exemplifies social resilience with its diverse cultural landscape, housing more than 20,000 indigenous people, which is a lot by the figures we have in the rest of the country, and constitute 8% of the population while representing 16 distinct indigenous groups. The project seeks to help Oaxaca become a sort of sponge city to manage rainwater better. As part of this vision, we have identified the San Felipe River Basin as one of the city's 3 primary river systems, and the the focus we have enables us to emphasize the critical importance of preserving the environment in the upper basin as it provides water to the city. So the project has been designed for and in collaboration with a community, the Núcleo Agrario San Felipe el Agua, comprised of 120 families who collectively own and manage this land, often recognized as the lung of the city. It is located very close to Oaxaca City, but outside of it, in the outskirts. The site is located at the fragile meeting point or edge between urban expansion and conservation land, and we're very interested in understanding those dynamics, essential for providing the community and the city with rich natural resources and benefits from its ecosystem services of local and regional impact. There's a community will and interest to revitalize this specific space and transform it into a communal infrastructure to support environmental preservation and regeneration of this basin. Leveraging the existing community organizations and their role as right holders and stewards of their territories, the community is working towards bringing people, nature, and their collective identity together with the revitalization of their grounds. So we envision this water intelligence hub as a space for that type of preservation, innovation, and heritage. We are repurposing specifically the abandoned nursery and transforming it into a social infrastructure to host monitoring and educational activities. It creates a multifunctional water-sensitive infrastructure that amplifies the benefits of stormwater management while enabling opportunities for recreation and knowledge sharing and transfer. The next project is one I'm very fond of, the Neighborhood Community Resilience Program in Miravalle Cultural Forum Water Pilot Project, which is located in the outskirts of Mexico City in the poorest and more marginalized neighborhood called Iztapalapa. For the past 2 years, through Resilient Cities Catalyst program, the Neighborhood Climate Resilience Program, and in collaboration with the Community Assembly, as well as a broader team that includes the Secretary of Risk Management of Mexico City and Iztapalapa local government, we have been partnering with this community, a self-organized, very resilient one in Mexico City, to increase their climate resilience, build capacity for their leaders, strengthen cross-sectoral partnerships, and design and implement specific projects. At this moment, we're finishing the rainwater harvest pilot the next week. Next week, we're having the opening of this system. The pilot project will recover a defunct rainwater filter and reservoir located in a central public space in this very abandoned or out of sight area of the city, and will transform it into a robust water harvesting canopy and with tanks with expanded capacity for recreation and sanitation. In addition, the team is redesigning the surrounding public realm, increasing outdoor amenities for social gatherings, cultural events, and active recreation with the goal of activating the space, advancing community belonging, and improving overall well-being. Miravalle is a community of approximately 15,000 residents. Since its onset, it has faced a complicated relationship with city administrations due to the lack of services, utilities, and basic infrastructure related to non-officialized land tenure. Now it is officialized, but they don't have the services. These issues inspired community advocates and leaders to form the Miravalle Community Assembly. They have secured land tenure and created recreational spaces. They built their own cultural center, a university, a library, a community kitchen, and a health clinic within their neighborhood, receiving international recognition for their resilience. Despite these successes, Miravalle faces significant health and environmental risk mirroring those of the city of Mexico: water scarcity, drought, seasonal flooding, air pollution, landslides, and a growing population that is expanding within the conservation land. So as a key goal of the Neighborhood Climate Resilience Program, scalability is a core project objective while capturing lessons learned and best practices for replicating harvesting canopies, rain gardens, water pump bikes. You can see here, that's what we're producing right now. The project's true strength lies in its co-design process. This collaborative approach has unlocked key strategies that demonstrate the project's potential for wider implementation. Next, I'll talk about a couple of projects that fall within the category of resilient public space infrastructure. A lot of the work we do tries to focus on the functional aspects of it, that therefore infrastructural. I'm talking about two twin projects, Shade Garden and Water Garden in Los Cabos, Baja California Sur, which we did with Julián Arroyo, Virens Paisaje, and a team of UNAM specialists that embrace the question of how we can integrate resilience to public spaces in marginalized areas of this very famous touristic destination in the aridest state and the most stricken by direct impacts from hurricanes and tropical storms in Mexico. The two projects, where you can see the pins are completely outside of the touristic circuit, were developed under Mexico's Urban Improvement Program, deployed by SEDATU, which is a federal agency that overlooks urban development in the country. Not only is the city of Los Cabos the most exposed to hydrometeorological impacts leading to severe river and coastal flooding and droughts that risk water availability, also these areas have very, very few green areas and a significant deficit of public recreational space, but also very basic services, such as pavements and lighting. Our response was to design two projects that pursue very specific impact objectives. First, microclimatically, to provide shade, which was crucial for creating a public space in the context of extreme heat waves and a lot of heat. Secondly, a social infrastructure that designs an exclusive and adaptable recreational space in these two neighborhoods. And thirdly, a resilient infrastructure that generates a multifunctional structure that can act as a logistics center whenever there's a hurricane. In the case of the water garden, by designing a set of terrace systems to hold water and prevent floods. I'll talk about this in a moment. What we like the most about these projects is that the community takes ownership and care of them and uses them all day intensely. Let me see if I can put a video on. Uh-oh.
Mi nombre es Luis Arturo, tengo 21 años y soy de aquí de la colonia de Las Palmas.
Get an idea of the area and where we're working at.
Yo practico este deporte que es BMX, que es la disciplina en deporte extremo de bicicleta. La verdad, pues este espacio se me hace muy padre, ya que pues aquí los jóvenes pueden venir a convivir, a hacer deporte y pues tenemos diferentes áreas aquí, que es para fútbol, la cancha de básquet y sobre todo aquí en la que estamos, el skatepark. Pues yo creo que este espacio tiene un buen impacto hacia la sociedad porque pues fomenta la salud, el deporte y pues es un buen lugar para pasar el rato, venir a hacer ejercicio. Ya llevo varios años viviendo aquí, entonces me ha tocado ver todo el cambio que ha tenido este lugar, lo que era antes un campo vacío.
So, as you can see, well, people actually appropriated the space and are making use of it, which is for us the definition of success for this very specific project. I think every project should define what success means for it. And for us, we're very happy that it has actually accomplished what we were seeking for. Also, the project articulates public space that provides a space for social organization, but also communication, shelter, refrigeration for medicines, electricity generation through the possibility of the panel of solar panels, and storing rainwater. It includes a professional sports courts, a covered up open space with a court, bleachers, restrooms, and a cistern, a space for calisthenics with a jogging track, and a space with playground equipment for children. The shade garden recovers and introduces native and xerophytic vegetation, which contributes to shelter from the sun during the day, but also implies low water consumption in irrigation and low maintenance. The open plan covered space has a saw shape oriented to limit direct solar incidence by encouraging the installation of the panels, homogeneously illuminate with natural light from the north during the day, but conducting south winds from cyclones outside of the public space, but admitting north winds to improve microclimatic comfort, reduce thermal gains to the interior, and eliminate energy consumption by active conditioning. The project materials are of fast construction and high durability with low maintenance and very few or non-material finishes to avoid elevating maintenance costs over time to municipalities that cannot secure enough funds for it. And this is the water garden, which is a different but twin project a couple of blocks south of the shade garden that shares the same architectural strategy and design premises. It is a water infrastructure and landscape project that seeks to slow down, infiltrate, and channel runoff water while offering a space for public use in contact with the landscape of the region that contributes to a better response to disasters. And it's very similar as the shade garden. It also has an accessible pathway system that connects the access plaza to the covered space and surrounding streets. It has LED lighting around the pathway system. As you can see, it's very dark all around, so it provides the perception of security for the whole neighborhood. And next, I'd like to talk about Tultiplanning, another opportunity we had to participate in Mexico's Urban Improvement Program, the same program. We were selected to design a family of 5 public spaces and urban services buildings in the state of Mexico. For this project, we collaborated with Departamento del Distrito, Taller Architects from Colombia, Ricardo García Santander, and Direns Paisaje. Tultitlan is an area with 43% of its population below poverty line and high levels of violence north of Mexico City. These projects represented a unique opportunity for collective work due to time and limited budget constraints. This time, the 5 projects included were a public library and auditorium, a fire station, which also includes a sports courtyard, retrofitting of a sports facility, a cultural center, a municipal market that we had to design in 4 months and get built in another 4 more months. That's why collectivity became crucial for the success of these projects. Design-wise, they all share a formal and material strategy that fosters the manufacturing and construction economy using local labor and materials from Tultitlan. Steel, for instance, it gets produced exactly in that neighborhood. The projects provided jobs for local communities by using the site's industrial materials while accommodating facilities for a growing vulnerable population and seeking to offer safe public infrastructure in an area with high criminal activity rates. I will talk specifically about this one, which is the Agora. The Agora is one of the largest projects of the five projects we were doing, and it's probably one of the most relevant because of the level of marginalization of the neighborhood. It is a 222-meter long public complex, and it connects existing urban facilities such as a women's clinic and a school. The project configures a new pedestrian axis in the center that connects a variety of public programs related to health, arts, culture, and education. And this pedestrian axis functions both as an urban plaza and a park. There are a couple of arid gardens, seating and light metal pergolas traverse the site from north to south and connect the 3 single-story buildings. The project is configured as an urban block to consolidate a safe urban environment, but also open, so you can go through it from one side of the block to the other. This is the market to the left, and this is part of the renovation of the market, and the fire station. The fire station I particularly enjoyed designing the most because it integrates the management of the Sierra de Guadalupe, close by, as a forest and conservation land vital to both Tultitlan and Mexico City. Fire stations in Mexico mostly tend to vegetated areas and fires. With a public space that seeks to promote a water culture and its relationship to green infrastructure and trees. Also, there used to be a basketball court on the site previous to this intervention. And we negotiated with the fire station commander to open up the roof of the main building to host this court to the community so that they can be used for firemen training activities, but also to play. And then lastly, this is part of that courtyard that they share with the community. And lastly, there's the community, the cultural community center that is next to the Sierra de Guadalupe. So we use a terrace strategy that also acts as a forum and a space to appreciate the view for the rest of the city. The next project is designed as a tool for collective intelligence. I'm gonna run through this because I know we're running out of time. Hydric districts are a project that we developed as a model. Is a good example of collaborative work, but it's a model that represents an urban territorial planning tool that places the idea of water as a resource at the center of urban development and public space creation, contributing to water resilience and helping face the current water crisis. Hydric districts operate at the intermediate scale of a base unit for the operation of any given intervention in a neighborhood. Its structure is based on a shared vision that pursues local, participatory, decentralized, sustainable, and circular economy management in a specific territory composed of neighborhoods or blocks that share certain identity figures. It operates within the premise that every drop of water that precipitates in a place stays in it. So it can be retained, infiltrated to the ground, evaporated, used, or reused in different ways, and being drained to the sewage as the very last option. And these are some of the stakeholder maps and some of the participatory process we did with academia. And these are the projects that we developed for the site and how we implemented them all over the district. And basically, we have three main concepts: to reveal history, to consolidate and expand green space system, but taking into account the amount of irrigation needed and providing for it, and understanding urban water as a resource, no matter what quality it has, but not as a waste. So 70% of the water that's being used by any housing area is gray water, so it could be reused for different purposes and not combined directly with sewage. So we have those types of strategies within this project. And these are the specific strategic projects that we're developing and how we envision the change for the area. So we have how we understand the city as a monumental centralized gray infrastructure, which we know is not going, towards the right place, and how we're imagining and envisioning the hydric districts as alternative models of decentralized urban water management. I'm running out of time, so I won't stop. I'll just show some of the images. This is part of a project we did at a planning level, BioCities Coastal Adaptation Initiative, of trying to understand how to link ecosystem services with tourism. And we did it for three very important touristic areas in Mexico that are very rich ecosystemically. And these are some of the results for that, which ended up not only in the analysis and the strategies, but also in specific projects that could speak of the value, not only of the environmental value, but also the social programming of it. And these are some of those references. We did something very similar in Bogota's environmental circuit, and we distributed all of these projects that they had at hand and connected them. Finally, these are some of the experiences we've worked in terms of installations, which is a smaller scale. I was invited to be a co-curator, content editing and designer of the Pavilion of Mexico in the 17th International Architecture Exhibition in Venice Biennale. And this is part of those results because we do believe these types of projects also help people engage in these topics through a very cultural and very small scale, very fast way of approaching them. And finally, we also were invited to represent Mexico at the 2019 Architecture and Urbanism Biennale in Seoul, and we named it the Big Equalizer. And what we did is a project that speaks of what we feel like when there's an earthquake. And that's why there's rubble in the floor and where you position your body when it comes to that. And when you near this furniture, you would hear the noises that you get to hear when you're in an earthquake. So that's it. Finally, what we believe is in promoting design and production of actionable ideas that hold meaningful impact, mediating without imposition and exclusion, interest, visions, and needs aligned or conflicting, participating in a culture of collective narratives, human and non-human engagement and dialogue, exploring new tools to observe, analyze, and visualize new models of collective inhabitation, and learning and collaborating with different people, specialists, communities, fields, and disciplines. This is our very unique team and our collaborators. Thank you very much for your time. I'm sorry.
Hello. Fantastic. So we have just a couple of minutes here for questions. Who's going to ask questions? Somebody over here? There we go.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. It was really pretty, seeing all the graphics. I see that you do a lot of work with like looking at the stakeholders and connecting with the community, but also having these sort of water systems implemented in your designs. So I was wondering how you sort of connect the community to these designs in showing them resilience for the local landscape.
Yeah, thank you for your question. It's a very relevant and interesting question. I think that at the beginning, when we approach a community, we always think that we're the ones who are going to provide them with information. And we've learned time and time over that it's almost always the opposite. They end up teaching us a lot about resilience and how they've lived in that specific territory. So it becomes a dialogue where we help them instrumentalize the knowledge that they have, but also maybe become more strategic in the decisions they make. But we end up learning almost more from them, from the way that they've been engaging and surviving over time. So what we do is through mapping, we start visualizing, because that's something that they usually don't do. We start showing them where they're at, different scales, different perspectives, different points of view. We walk around, we understand the site from different ideas of the community and of government. So we sort of like become the liaison or the bridge between government, financial entities, and local community as mediators, I would say. But it's less about bringing technical solutions rather than listening and sometimes just connecting dots. But thank you for your question. It's very, very pertinent to the topic.
Good. We have time for one more question. Is there another?
There's one over here.
Oh, great.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I thought like you guys like looking at mapping as a tool to like scale down from urban to like urban scales to your site scale. How did you take like the larger context of the climate change reports and building life and materials as you're designing buildings as well as landscapes in terms of like because you're looking at so many different scales, how do you grapple with all of it together?
Well, it sounds like it's a lot, but it's actually just finding the right threads. So, for instance, it's what we do is start from a perspective that understands that there's no formulas. So when you think about sustainability, a lot of the times we say, just solar panels, water catchment system, we put it in there and it's sustainable. And it's never like that. It's understanding who are we building for? What are the challenges ahead? Who's going to maintain it? Who's going to pay for it? What are the times associated with that? And so we just select a number of very relevant points for a given project. So it looks like we're doing a lot, but we're actually just editing the information that we're inputting into a project and making decisions not only on our own perspective, but like testing them and learning from these other stakeholders. So in the end, the project becomes what all of the stakeholders actually want. There is a lot of, it's very relevant to be aware and conscious of who we're inviting to the table, because there's power associated to that. So we have a responsibility to, select carefully who's going to join, because who's not there will not, their voice will be so much softer. But if you do that like ethically and trying to be as inclusive as possible and trying to understand the voices of even things that do not have a voice, like forests or soil, and you try to embed that voice into the negotiating the table, that's the beginning of it.
Fantastic. So folks, here's the good news. Elena Tudela will be with us for the next several days. There's a series of workshops that are embedded in different courses. She'll be with us in an urban planning studio tomorrow, and then 2 architecture courses, including Architecture 700 and 655 on Friday. So thank you very much, not only for sharing your work, but for joining our community and having all these touch points with students. Thank you, Elena. Yes. Now the next step is ice cream, and that happens that way. So we'll see you out there.
Sorry that I have to.